Well then, there you have it. Big news this afternoon that PSR will be no more as of the 26-27 season, or at least that's what's being reported. The Premier League, I don't believe, have released an official statement at the time of recording, but is the alternative any better? We will talk about that in this video. Yes, guys, how's it going? Welcome back to a new video on this Friday evening. Looking forward to the return of Newcastle United tomorrow. I will be there, 5:30 kickoff against Manchester City. Obviously, Eddie Howe's done his press conference this morning. Glinted a little bit of hope in terms of seeing Hall back on the pitch tomorrow, potentially seeing Livramento very soon. Johan Wissa still appears to be very much missing in action, but despite what has been a tough start of the season, Eddie Howe, I think, has been fairly realistic in what he has said that things need to change, that we need to do better. Let's hope that the West Ham Brentford games were that line in the sand. Man City is never going to be an easy one, but at home, under the lights, 5:30 kickoff, few beers on the way up to the ground. I'm hoping it's going to be a good one. If you want to let me know your early predictions for the game, please do so down in the comments. But as always with football, it's off the field stuff we're going to be talking about in this one. And obviously, whenever money, PSR, rule changes are involved, it does get the Geordie Nation, a little twinkle in our eye, thinking, is this finally time to spend the money? No, of course it's not. Because I don't think that, it's just the way it is, unfortunately. I'm laughing and joking. It's a load of rubbish, really. But there was a vote today. Premier League teams were voting for two potential new, financial strategies of how the Premier League work. One of which was anchoring, and the other was the squad cost ratio. One of them has been voted in, one of them was not. The one that was not is called anchoring. This was put forward as an alternative to PSR, and essentially what it meant was that teams could only spend as much as the lowest ranked team in the Premier League could spend. So they were trying to, somewhat level the playing field. So, for example, I think I was reading the example, likes of a Southampton get relegated in 20th place. They, as a team, got paid £100 for their 20th place finish. They got paid £100. I hope they got more than that. £100 million for their 20th place finish. I don't know, £50 on £50 million on player sales. This much on revenue. Right, it's 400 million. They can then add on an extra 150, and then that's the max any Premier League team could spend. That one did not get passed. I think seven teams voted no, one abstained, and then the rest all voted in favour. So you would assume probably the bottom half of the table voted in favour, the top half didn't. In terms of Newcastle United, it's a strange one really, because I understand that what we want to do is, without having the revenues of a Man City and a Chelsea, we can't spend the fees that they're spending under current PSR because we don't have the commercial deals, we don't have the revenue, we don't have what we need to go and spend. So on that sense, having the teams above us, Man City, Chelsea, whatever, capped, sounds like a good idea. But really for us, that we don't want to cap. We have the richest owners in world football. So we don't want it capped. We don't want the anchoring. We don't want to be tethered to that. Really what we want is for it to be scrapped all together and let us spend whatever we want. So it's like a bit of a double-edged sword. You don't want to agree to that. And then actually, we're the ones who are like, oh, well, we can only spend as much as, Southampton did. That doesn't sound great. So yeah, it's fair enough. You stop other teams from spending. I guess that would, level out the playing field for the whole of the Premier League. But, really, you want us to be able to spend whatever we want. So that's a bit of a strange one. It didn't get passed. That one got voted against. That one's not happening. Instead, what is as I say, it's all over the reports today. I can't see that the Premier League have actually released a statement. However, Sky Sports themselves are saying that it is the new squad cost ratio voted in as of this afternoon will replace PSR. So what is squad cost ratio? Does it mean Newcastle can spend whatever they want? Of course it doesn't. Squad cost ratio, you might have heard of this before. It's what they already have in UEFA. They already have this in the Champions League. You might have heard this before where, was it Aston Villa and Chelsea both got big fines from UEFA because they met the Premier League PSR rules, but they didn't meet the Champions League ones, and then there was a bunch of fines passed around at the start of the season. So essentially that's what this was, and they're looking to bring the same to the Premier League. I mean, in terms of that, I guess having one way of it being done rather than having different leagues doing different things, I guess it might help keep your accounts in shape of knowing what's coming. But it is somewhat different. So essentially, let me actually read you what it is. So the squad cost ratio, the Premier League squad cost ratio limit will be 85% of the club's so you can spend 85% of the club's related revenue and net profit from player sales. So if it sounds similar to PSR, that's because it is. It's essentially what it's same as it is previously. We, under basic rules of PSR, we could only spend what money we brought in from revenue and player sales. The Adidas deal in post. I keep saying, I was watching Bruno's video. That's how it's fresh in my mind. So if you've not seen it, Bruno did a 45-minute video this morning of his day in the life as a footballer. Bruno's canny, isn't he? We're like Bruno. But I had in post was the advert in the corner, and I thought, I wonder how much we got paid for that. Will that pay for Bruno's wages for a few months? I hope so. But yes, Red Bull, Monster, these are the things that we're bringing in to try and have that revenue to spend under PSR. Well, this essentially is fairly similar to that. We can spend up to 85% of our revenue with a 30% on top of similar to PSR, because obviously we can spend the net revenue from PSR, and then the owners get an allowance of an additional 150 million over 3 years. But essentially they've put a topper on. So they've said with an additional 30% extra spend over the same number of years. So really it's working very, very similar to PSR. No, it does not let Newcastle go out and spend oodles and boodles of money. We have to do the same as what we are now. The owners can't now come in and spend whatever the hell they want unless, really, I suppose what we're waiting for is to find out what happens with, Manchester City. Obviously, well, both claim they won, didn't they? Man City and the Premier League both claim that they won the side of, proper value of a sponsor. That's what Man City were contesting, to say that the Premier League were incorrect in being able to tell you what they think something's worth. Hopefully we could see a little bit of a budge around that. But realistically, they both just settled. Man City went, well, if you let us off, then we won't do it anymore. And the Premier League went, okay. So nothing changed on that. And then obviously we've got the 1 million point process still going on, and we'll wait to hear what happens on that. But in terms of what has been voted today, unfortunately, there is little change from Newcastle United. Like anything new, the hope is that there can be, a little bit of flexibility, maybe a couple of loopholes here and there, somewhere for Newcastle to find a way around this or a way to use this to our advantage. But no, essentially, it's working out fairly similar to that it did previously. And the onus is on, really what we've been saying for a while now, for Newcastle to go out and get the sponsors. I don't want to sound like a broken record. Peter Silverstone obviously recently moved to Juventus, agreed change of movement. I think, looking at it from the outside in, you would argue that he was a Darren Eales man. Dan Ashworth left, Paul Mitchell left, Darren Eales left, Hopkinson's come in, Ross Wilson's come in. You would imagine that we will probably see a few more Hopkinson people come in and take over like the roles that had been left, or as I say, Hopkinson himself has had a big part in a lot of the financial decisions in his previous roles. Maybe he's the man who can actually, get on the blower and get a few of these deals in. I think that Newcastle have been holding off. I think Newcastle have been holding off to wait to see what happened with Manchester City before they entered a big deal and went, damn, if we'd just waited, we could have got the big Saudi air, across the front of the training ground, or, still not big on the idea of changing St. James's Park. Don't want to change the name of it, but St. James's Park, sponsored by whatever. I'm more down to talk about that, especially if you can get a big deal. I think potentially Newcastle didn't want to rush out and get a 5-year deal with someone and go, oh, we could have waited and then got like a mega 100 million a year one from somewhere else. But what are we now? 5 years of the takeover, is that right? 4 years of Eddie Howe? I think it was 4 years of Eddie Howe. Was that right? I think so. At this point, we should have just got a rolling contract, like your mobile. Well, 5 million a year for whatever. And then that would have been something. So if we are going to have to play by the rules, play by the new squad cost ratios, we will need to up our game. And it's the route we're going to have to go down. Every time, as I started at the very start of this video, I said every time something money related comes out, there's a glint in my eye. Oh my God, this is it. We're going to spend money. No. And I think unless even with the Man City stuff, realistically people are like, oh, Man City's going to get relegated. I think they'll probably come to an agreement similar to the one they already came to. Well, we'll let you off, but we won't do it again, and nobody else is allowed to do it either. That would not surprise me whatsoever. And then, so if we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to play by the rules. We have to get Champions League again this season. My God, you talk about wanting to get in the Carabao Cup final. It's great for the fans. I'd love to go to Wembley again. Love to go and just smash up. Party around London. It was awesome. But for the club, I think we probably lost money. The buses and the flags and the scarves, the League Cup doesn't really pay you. It's a great accolade for the club. It was fantastic for the fans, but it's not gonna pay us. Champions League, round of 16, talk millions. So we need to get into that this year. We need to get through the stage. I think we will. I think we will get through to the next round, but we need to do it for next year as well. So we have to sort that out. We need to get on the commercial front, start actually making some deals, bringing some money in. If we're going to play by the book, we'll have to start doing it. And then the other thing we'll have to do, and I don't want fans to fall out over this, but we need to start doing it. And it's player trading, selling players, Longstaff went, big up Longstaff. I think he's doing all right in Leeds from what I've seen. We probably sold him 2 years too late. Really for the amount we sold him for. Like Miggy, we probably could have doubled his value if he went 2 years earlier. Alexander Isak, we've brought some money in for him. So hopefully there is a bit of a kitty going into January despite having spent money in the summer. But we need to start being way more fluid with it. As I've read out there, 85% of the club's football's related revenue and net profit from player sales. So it's literally in bold writing at the side. And, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with having to sell our homegrown players to bring money in, to spend money. But Darren Neal said it. The first thing he said when he came in was, well, we'll have to play a trade. It's the way it'll be. We'll sell him this season because then we can buy him. Then 2 years later, we'll sell him again. And then we'll buy somebody else. And it's just it's like what Man City are doing. It's like a constant flow. Everyone's got their favourites. People don't want players to leave. But the revenue will open up to us because it's on, as I say, because of the way it works year by year, being able to sell 2 or 3 players, bring 2 or 3 players in, sell 2 for 3 more, bring 2 or 3 in, and you're just naturally rolling the squad up. We had a good summer. I'm just kind of going for it now. We've kind of moved on a little bit from what we were talking about, but Newcastle United spent a good chunk of money this season. But you could argue, that our actual squad quality hasn't really skyrocketed. Like, instead, what we haven't really raised the ceiling, we've like raised the floor, if you know what I mean. So I would argue that our first 11 last season, our first 11 this season, aren't massively. You could even argue without Isak, you could argue that it's gone down slightly despite spending 200 million. But what we have done is the floor. So our worst team last year versus our worst team this year, is better. Like, we've raised the floor. Like, bringing in a Ramsey, who I think has looked good. I think Elanga needs to get his arse in gear, to be honest. But generally speaking, we have raised the floor. What we need to do is start player trading, start generating money, and actually raise the ceiling. That's what we need to do. Like, you can talk about a Wizard. Maybe Wizard is what we've not seen yet, and he will take us that etch higher. But if we're going to keep continuing to try and compete for Champions League, held under these rules and regulations of spend, we'll have to be more clever with how we're actually generating the money and how we are moving the money around. Because that's the thing, if it's player trading, it's like you're just maneuvering the money around. It's all the same money. It's the same pot. Sell him, buy him, sell him for 30 million, buy him for 30 million, sell him for 20 million, buy him. Like, I'm not even saying buy them and then sell them for loads. I'm just saying maneuver the money, because then you've constantly got this cash flow that we can just keep refreshing and bringing in new, younger players. But obviously that's not how Eddie Howe likes to do his business. Really, Eddie Howe likes to have his proven, his trusted players. And I think that's probably what has made it tough. If we're not going to do... I'm just looking at this on my... Sorry, it's just caught my attention. PSR scrapped Newcastle United and Premier League rivals vote in new financial rules. So look, Newcastle have voted for it. They obviously see a benefit in doing it, but it's not going to be the benefit we fully see. But yes, there you go. Chatted for a while there. Enjoy the video. Enjoy your Friday evening. Enjoy your day tomorrow, whatever you end up doing. As I say, I will be on tomorrow for a video. Hopefully singing and dancing in the big market around 7:30. But we will wait and see. Thanks for watching.